In Gloucestershire, pharmacists may stand in for GPs to ease the pressure.
Every accident and emergency department, bar one, misses its targets. Hospital bosses say they could be heading for a meltdown.
We end up crowded in the emergency department and we end up queuing in corridors and unable to offload our ambulance patients.
Hello, good evening. Points West has discovered that all but one of our hospital emergency departments failed to meet targets for casualty waiting times last month. And this evening, patients are being asked to stay away this winter unless they have a serious problem. Alex has more details.
Yeah, that's right, David. Figures for October reveal that although Yeovil District Hospital managed to see people within the time limit, all of the other A&E departments didn't. Health officials fear there could be a recurrence of problems seen in previous years when some emergency units struggle to cope. Well, in a moment, we'll ask why our hospitals seem to find themselves under this pressure year after year. But first, our health correspondent Matthew Hill's been given special access to film at one of our busiest A&E units.
It's 11 o'clock in the morning and the A&E at the West's main teaching hospital in Bristol is already extremely busy. Declan Black has just arrived by ambulance.
I've got a fever, some food poisoning and been vomiting all night, so not too well.
Patients coming into A&E have to be seen within 4 hours under government targets. The latest figures show Yeovil is the only hospital in the West to achieve that. Well, this morning it's not so busy. In fact, there are 2 empty bays, but that's unusual. If they were to fill up with just 2 more patients, then they'd have to start spilling out onto the corridor. That's why it's essential that we keep winter pressures to a minimum.
What's happened to you today?
Seizure.
OK.
This consultant has devised an award-winning emergency checklist to make sure that vital signs are monitored to spot which patients are deteriorating quickly.
We see mounting pressures as the months go by, and usually it hits just around Christmas or after New Year when the whole system of urgent care goes down into meltdown, really. And so we end up crowded in the emergency department and we end up queuing in corridors and unable to offload our ambulance patients. I think we're predicting a bad flu season. We've seen that in Australia there's been a severe pandemic of flu, which has brought extra patients on top of that into hospital. And so all the predictions are gearing up for a bad winter for the NHS.
By 12 o'clock, the computer screen warns staff that 2 more patients are coming.
We're full now. We've got 2 spaces in resus, so we're full. So the next patient that will arrive, unless we move someone to the ward in the next 10 minutes, will be queuing.
This is part of the solution. It's called the discharge lounge. Patients leaving the BRI are given advice and medication by the hospital pharmacist.
It's encouraging flow through the hospital. They can, have their lunch here, sit in a chair, have the television on. It's a bit more relaxed, and it also means that another patient can use the hospital bed.
Part of the solution is making sure as many staff as possible are vaccinated against flu. NHS staff have the vaccination for free, but there is a lot of variation in take-up rates. But for the first time this year, staff working in care homes will also be offered jabs for free. So far, we've been spared a really cold spell, but it's expected to get colder over the next few weeks. So patients are being asked to think twice before going to A&E.
Get their flu vaccine, make sure they stock up on their medicines early before Christmas, and if they are unwell, to seek help through 111 or their local pharmacy.
So, unless patients play their part in using these stretched emergency services responsibly, they could put other patients at risk. Matthew Hill, BBC Points West, Bristol.
Well, joining me now is Dr. Jeremy Welch, who's a GP in Tewkesbury, but is also a member of the group that decides how NHS money is spent in Gloucestershire. Thanks for coming on the programme tonight. Has the NHS been caught out already this winter, or are there simply not enough resources?
So winter planning is an all-year process, and absolutely we've been working since last winter, really, getting ready for this winter. So we've definitely not been caught out, and a lot of the plans are not into fruition yet and will be rolled out increasingly over the next few weeks.
In Gloucestershire, you have a plan for GPs to work in A&E, but of course you're generalists rather than specialists. Is that a safe thing to do?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a place for GPs in the emergency department. we would absolutely prefer the GPs to be in primary care, in their GP surgeries, but we know that a degree of patients do end up in the emergency department when potentially they'll be better treated, more efficiently treated by a GP. I mean, that said, we would much rather those patients came to their general practitioners, and so we're putting a lot more resources across the county into general practice.
But also you're considering if GPs go into the front line, as it were, in casualty, then you're filling behind you in your general practices with pharmacists and paramedics. Again, is that of a concern for you?
No, so this is something which is not new for Gloucestershire or for the county, really. So it's something we've looked at for a long while. In my surgery picture behind us, we've got clinical pharmacists working and seeing patients who, to be honest, know actually a lot more about drugs and about the patient's interactions with the drugs than I do. And so we're using pharmacists. We're shortly to start using paramedics helping with our home visiting service, supported by GPs, monitored by GPs, just to take some of the pressure and workload off GPs so that they can free time up to see more patients.
Do you think people are actually going to A&E more because they know they don't have to faff around with 111? And if they go to their GP, an appointment might be a couple of weeks down the line. They've got to go back for blood tests, for scans and all the rest of it, where if you go to A&E, you get treated straight away.
Well, unfortunately, if everyone goes to A&E, you can't get treated straight away, and that's a challenge we see. So we're putting lots more resources into primary care. We're increasing appointments. We're increasing what we would call the winter pressure appointments to absorb some of the increasing pressure that we see. We're opening surgeries later in the evenings, at the weekends as well, to pick up the work. The balance is at seeing your own GP, you get the continuity of care, and you actually get someone who knows you well and will be able to see you again.
OK. Just finally, have you had your flu jab yet?
I have had my flu jab, yes.
Good man. Thanks for joining us. Thank you.